Have you ever wondered why you keep defending certain ideas, even when you no longer believe in them? In this eye-opening video, you'll discover the dirtiest and most invisible psychological trick working on you every single day, without you even realizing it. We're talking about a mental mechanism so powerful that it shapes your opinions, your decisions, and even your identity. Get ready to dive into an intense psychological journey where we'll reveal what commitment and consistency really means and how it manipulates your choices. How this trick is used by politicians, brands, religions, and even in relationships. How to break free from this trap and start thinking for yourself again. The silent signs that you might be getting manipulated right now. If you've ever felt stuck to an idea, group, or identity just to avoid seeming inconsistent, this video is for you. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to wake up to this truth. And in the comments, tell us, have you ever fallen for this trick? The illusion of control. Are you really in charge? You wake up, the alarm rings, you choose to ignore it for 5 more minutes. Then you get up, brush your teeth, pick out what to wear, have some coffee, maybe check your phone. At no point do you think, I'm being manipulated. And why would you? Everything seems under control. You're making choices, right? Wrong. In reality, there's a psychological trick, dirty, ancient, and silent, working inside your head every single day. And the worst part, it makes you believe you're in command when actually you're just reacting. Like a rat that learned the food path in a maze, thinking it decided on its own. This trick goes by many technical names, but here we'll call it what it really is: the desperate need to appear consistent with yourself. It's an invisible urge that forces you to maintain a stable image, even if that image is wrong, outdated, or dragging you down into unhappiness. The dirtiest part of this trick, it disguises itself as a virtue. Since we were kids, we were taught that changing your mind is a sign of weakness, that admitting mistakes is humiliating, that consistency is a form of honor. And there lies the trap. You grow up believing being consistent is more important than being true to yourself. Want a simple example? Think about the last time you defended an idea just because you had defended it before. Maybe you don't even agree with it that much anymore, but something inside you stops you from backing down. You already posted about it on social media. You argued with friends. You took a stand. And now backing off would be almost like destroying your own identity. But who said your identity has to be a prison? This trick, this dirty trick, works because the human brain hates contradictions. When you behave in a way that clashes with what you believe or say, a tension called cognitive dissonance arises. It's like an internal alarm screaming, "Something's wrong!" And instead of investigating that alarm, most people simply ignore it. Or worse, double down on the mistaken belief. This isn't just a minor mind detail. This defines your life. It's this trick that traps you in relationships that are already over, in jobs that destroy you, in routines you hate. All in the name of false consistency. A consistency you were taught, imposed on you, and that now lives inside you, silently controlling your decisions. And if that sounds bleak, it is. But the scariest part is yet to come. Because this trick doesn't just work on your innermost thoughts. It's exploited, manipulated, and amplified by companies, governments, algorithms, and even the people closest to you. Think you're immune? Think you're thinking autonomously? Wait until you see how this mechanism is used to control everything, from your purchases to your beliefs. How they use the trick against you, invisible manipulation. Imagine you walk into an electronics store just to take a look around. Inside, you meet a friendly salesperson who shows you the latest smartphone model. You say you're just browsing, but they offer you an exclusive discount. Today only. Something inside you hesitates. You didn't even plan to buy anything, but you feel the need to justify your visit, to honor the time you spent there. And before you know it, you walk out with a new phone. That feeling, that urge to act just to stay consistent with what you started, that's the trick. Again, and again, and again. Now imagine that same principle applied on an industrial scale. Because that's exactly what happens to you every day. on social media, digital storefronts, TV, personalized ads. Algorithms don't just watch your behavior, they shape it, nudging you into small decisions that, when added up, form what you believe to be your own will. But it's not. Here's an even clearer example. You open Instagram and see an ad for an online course. You ignore it, but the next day you see another post about the same topic. Then a recommendation from an influencer you follow, talking about how important it is to learn that skill. Slowly, you start thinking, maybe I really need this. But what's really happening is your mind trying to align with what it's seen repeatedly, because the brain hates to appear inconsistent with what it repeatedly consumes. This phenomenon has a name: the mere exposure effect. Psychology has known about it for decades. Marketers know it. Politicians know it. Apps know it. They plant little seeds of forced consistency. A like here, a click there, an innocent newsletter sign up. It all starts as just a test, but each action builds a history, and history becomes identity. You start acting to uphold this new identity that wasn't chosen by you but was suggested to you, slowly, sneakily. And the most ironic part? You feel like you're in control. You defend the purchase, justify the course, share the ideology, and all this feeds the spiral. The more you defend it, the more you believe it. Because admitting you fell into a trap requires something most people don't have the courage to face. That maybe your choices aren't really your own. This consistency trick is like a parasite. It slips into your mind when you're distracted and feeds on your need to maintain a coherent narrative about who you are. And with that, you become predictable, manipulable, sellable. And now, I'm going to ask you an uncomfortable question. How many of your recent decisions were really yours? How many were reactions to a sequence of invisible stimuli that led you exactly where they wanted? You might even think, that doesn't work on me, but that thought might already be part of the trick. Trapped by yourself. How you become your own jailer. Have you ever had that strange moment when you realize you no longer believe in something you once stood for? Maybe a cause, a lifestyle, a group of friends, or even a relationship. But still, you stay there, defending it, maintaining it, feeding it. Why? Because admitting change means admitting you were wrong. And the human brain, as powerful as it is, has an almost desperate resistance to the idea of being wrong. It's like it says, if I was wrong before, then who am I now? This is the heart of the dirty trick. Consistency turns you into a prisoner of your past. Imagine a young person who spends years defending a political ideology. He posts about it, debates, buys books, attends events, builds friendships around it. The ideology becomes part of his identity. But little by little, he starts seeing flaws, contradictions, hypocrisies. He thinks about leaving, changing, rethinking everything. But the pain would be too great. He'd lose friends, face criticism, maybe even family rejection. So he stays, even without believing, even feeling like he's betraying himself. Not out of cowardice, but out of consistency. An illusion of consistency, toxic and deeply human. This happens in relationships too. You meet someone, fall in love, build a story. Over time, conflicts arise, disappointments, wear and tear. But instead of leaving, you cling to the narrative. But it's been so many years. You stay not because you love, but because you don't want to seem inconsistent with the person you started it all with. It's the same with careers. People spend decades in jobs that destroy them. Why? Because they invested too much time, too much money, too much prestige. They say, it's too late to change now. But what they're really saying is, I'm afraid of seeming inconsistent with the choice I made when I was 20. This psychological trick is silent but devastating. It convinces you that abandoning an idea is abandoning yourself. That changing course is weakness, when, in fact, it's the bravest thing anyone can do. And this is where the system chains you. Because while you insist on holding on to old stories, just to seem consistent, you become predictable, manipulable, and above all, unhappy. Your life becomes a performance, a play where you are both actor and audience, pretending to believe so you don't have to change. True psychological freedom begins the moment you say, maybe I was wrong, And that's okay. But how many have that kind of strength? The darkest use when consistency becomes mental captivity. Let's start with a real case. In 1978, more than 900 people took their own lives in a remote settlement called Jonestown, led by a man named Jim Jones. Men, women, children. They drank poison massively, voluntarily. An event so absurd it's still hard to believe. But how did it happen? Sure, there was Jones' charisma, the group's isolation, the surveillance. But there was something deeper and more invisible, the trick of consistency. For years, these people invested time, money, faith, even family bonds to follow an ideal. They gave up everything to live in that group. And the more they invested, the harder it was to admit they'd been fooled. Even when doubts crept in, they couldn't leave. Because leaving meant admitting that all of it, those years, those choices, those sacrifices, were for nothing. The human brain panics at that idea. So it chooses the lesser pain to keep going, to persist, to pretend it still makes sense. And this isn't about weak or stupid people. This trick is so powerful it can trap anyone. Now, take Jonestown out of the equation for a moment. Think of modern cults, extreme ideologies, authoritarian leaders, public figures who manipulate the masses. They all, without exception, use this mechanism. They make you take a small step. Share this. Comment here. Come to a meeting. Change your profile picture. Defend this idea. Sounds innocent, right? But the moment you take a public stand, emotionally invest yourself, you become emotionally hostage to your own image. And now, if someone confronts you with an uncomfortable truth, what do? You resist. You attack. You deny. Because surrendering would mean you were wrong. And being wrong at this level breaks your identity. Manipulative leaders know this. They don't need to physically imprison you. All they need is for you to say out loud, "I believe." From there, you do the rest yourself. You will defend that belief with everything you have. Even if it goes against your logic, your values, your freedom. Because you need to keep up the appearance of consistency. And consistency, in this case, becomes a chain. This doesn't only happen in cults. It happens in political groups, internet echo chambers, toxic fandoms, even abusive relationships. It always starts with small commitments. And then, the fear of seeming inconsistent pushes you all the way to the edge of the abyss, even when you know you're wrong. Breaking free from prison, how to break the cycle of toxic consistency. First of all, let's make one thing clear. Consistency is not the problem itself. It's a tool. Being consistent with your values, your actions, and who you want to be, that can be a virtue. The problem arises when consistency stops being a conscious choice and becomes an emotional straitjacket. So, how do you break this cycle? 1. Accept that change is part of growth. The first thing you need to accept, and it's harder than it sounds, is that you will change. It's inevitable. You're not the same person you were 5 years ago, and you won't be the same 5 years from now. Your mind changes. Your values evolve. So holding on to positions just to seem true to yourself is like wearing clothes that no longer fit, just because they were once your favorite. Saying, "I changed," is not a sign of weakness. It's a shout of courage. 2. Practice psychological distancing. Whenever you catch yourself stuck to an idea, group, or identity, stop and ask, if I hadn't said this out loud, would I still believe it? This simple question can reveal whether you're defending something out of conviction or fear of seeming inconsistent. If you realize you're holding on to a story just to save face or avoid embarrassment, beware. You're being manipulated by your own mind. 3. Claim the right to contradict yourself. You have the right to change your mind, to rethink your beliefs, to walk away from paths you once chose. Great thinkers, leaders, scientists all have changed their minds before. And you know why? Because they were more committed to truth than to their own image. That's what separates a growing human from an emotional prisoner. You're not obligated to keep believing something just because you defended it yesterday. 4. Watch out for micro-commitments. It all starts small. An impulsive comment, post, poorly thought-out phrase. These little acts create a sense of commitment. And commitment turns into consistency. So think twice before publicly taking a stand on something. Ask yourself, does this really represent me? Or am I just reacting to a moment? What seems small today can keep you trapped for years. 5. Start celebrating those who change their minds. Society still sees people who change their minds as weak, unreliable, or unstable. But true strength lies in those who can rethink their paths. So whenever someone says, "I was wrong," don't ridicule them, admire them. This attitude, if practiced collectively, holds transformative power. You've probably noticed that to break free from psychology's dirtiest trick, you need to do something extremely rare today. Think for yourself. And thinking for yourself requires a huge dose of humility, courage, and patience. But it's worth every second. The final mirror: who are you when no one's watching? So now, the most uncomfortable question of all. Who are you when no one's watching? Not who you say you are. Not who you show on social media. Not the version your friends, family, or followers expect from you. But who you really are. What you truly believe. What you would do if you could forget everything you've ever said, everything you've ever posted, everything you've sworn to stand for. You know why? Because sometimes the biggest prison isn't an authoritarian regime, or a religious cult, or an extremist ideology. Sometimes the biggest prison is the very image you've built of yourself. Have you ever stopped to think about that? How many times have you defended an idea, only to realize deep down it no longer makes sense, but still held on to it, just so you wouldn't seem inconsistent, weak, or unstable? How many times have you stayed silent in the face of something wrong, just because you once agreed with it? How many decisions have you kept just because you'd already started, even when your gut begged you to stop? That's the dirtiest trick in psychology. Not because it's evil, but because it's invisible. It lives inside you. But here's the good news. Now that you see the trick, you can't unsee it. You have a choice, and that in itself is freedom. If you've made it this far, it means part of you is ready for change. And if this message resonates with you, then it's time to act. Like this video, it shows you value content that makes you think. Subscribe to the channel, because every week I share reflections that don't treat you like a fool, but like someone capable of growth. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. That person you see stuck in patterns, clinging to ideas out of pride. You can help them with one click. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt trapped by an image you created of yourself? Have you ever defended something just to avoid admitting you were wrong? Tell me in the comments. Seriously, sharing this might not only set you free, but also free someone who sees themselves in your story. The truth is, we've all fallen for this trick, but only the brave have the humility to break free from it. And if you're here now, it means you've already taken the first step. So take a deep breath. And remember, consistency is a virtue, but freedom is a right. See you in the next video.